Hello and very welcome to a new tutorial in a series of tutorials for the Lampy console. In this tutorial we will talk about the show settings. Please note that you can only alter the show settings from within a running show. To do so, open the side menu, click on the gear icon and switch to show settings. Everything in the show settings tab is saved in the show file. Let's start by looking at the playback page change settings. You see we have different settings there. By default, the option keep active in background is activated. Let's have a look at them from left to right. Let's first select autofix active playbacks. Autofix active playbacks simply carries on playbacks that are on to the new page in case you change the page. Let's try this. I have one playback here. And let's just start it. Now that the playback is on, let's change the fader page. You see, the playback never disappears. Let's switch off this playback by clicking on off and clicking on the button of the playback. If I now change the playback page, you see that this playback disappears and reappears once I reach page 1 again. The next option we have is release on page change. To test that, let's turn on our playback again and select the release on page change option. Now let's change the page. You see that the playback disappears. And once we come back to page 1, it has been switched off. So release on page change always switches off every playback on the previous page when you change to a new page. The last option is keep active in background. To test keep active in background, let's turn on our playback again. Now as we change playback pages, you see it also disappears from the faders. But once we reach playback page number 1 again, you see it's still running. The next box that we're going to look at controls how the master fader reacts. The master fader is the fader found on the right next to the playback faders. By default, the master fader is set to be a crossfade AB fader. Let's start by looking at the first option, which is called speed fader. When the master fader is configured as a speed fader, it will act as a speed fader for the selected playback. When it does so, it will alter all timings of the assigned playback, whereas 100% is the speed as programmed and everything below will be slowed down relatively. The next option we can choose from is to configure the master fader as an in-fade fader. When the master fader is configured as an in-fade fader, it will continually crossfade the output of all parameters that are set to fade in the library. The last option, which is also the default, is called crossfade AB fader. With this option, the master fader can be used to crossfade from cue to cue in a playback. That's a very common setting when controlling a theatrical play. Let's scroll down a little bit to see more of the UI settings group box. The first setting we see is the work light brightness. The work light is the LED strip in front of the console, which may be used to light up running orders or other documents. It is also useful to light up a USB keyboard. In order to adjust the brightness of the work light, simply move the fader to the left or to the right. You can also use the first encoder. The next setting defines how bright the LEDs next to the multifunction faders will be. To adjust the brightness of these, simply drag the slider up or down. You can also use the second encoder to set the brightness. The third and last setting in the UI settings group box is called multifunction fader LEDs mimic fixture color. When this switch is turned off, the LEDs next to the multifunction faders will always light up in orange when you're on a fixture page. They will appear brighter when a fixture is selected and darker when a fixture is not selected. However, when you turn this switch on, the LEDs will light up in the actual colors of the fixture that is output on stage. In other multifunction fader modes, the faders will still display the color of the mode. Next, let's scroll down a bit more. We can now see the settings to change the desk clock pin. The desk clock may be activated at any time from the console's side menu by clicking on the little lock button. The default pin of the console is 4 times 0, so 0, 0, 0, 0. If you never changed your pin before, you do not need to enter the current pin. If you would like to change the pin and have a keyboard attached, just click into the field and type the actual number. You can also click on the pen icon next to the text field to enter a number. To be able to save the pin, you need to repeat the new pin. When done, click on OK. Now that both pins match, we can click on Change Pin. Scrolling down a little more, we can see an option that is called Show Autosave. By default, Show Autosave is enabled and will automatically save the show file in 10-minute intervals. You may turn off Show Autosave by simply clicking on the switch. Next up are the input settings. To adjust the input settings, let's scroll down a little bit more. The switch in the first group box will activate the Open Sound Control protocol. Open Sound Control is a de facto standard protocol for many devices. We recommend using the app Touch OSC in case you want to remote control your Lampy from a tablet or smartphone. As soon as Open Sound Control is enabled, you can see basic instructions on how to connect your tablet or phone to the console. Touch OSC templates are provided by Highlight and can be downloaded from their website. Scrolling down a little bit more, we can also see more information here. We see that there are no OSC clients connected at the moment. Let's scroll down a little bit more. The next setting we can see is the sound input. To enable the sound input, simply click on the button. The Lampy analyzes 3 frequency bands from the audio input. One is bass, one is the mid level, and one is the high level. If you have an audio signal coming in here, you will see a logic analyzer displaying the levels of each of these frequency ranges. Then you can use the sliders to adjust the low and the maximum threshold, which are displayed with the 2 white lines next to the slider. The low threshold is marked by the bottom line. The high threshold is marked by the top line. In order for the console to trigger a bass, mid, or high event, the incoming sound needs to be higher than the top threshold, and to trigger again, the value needs to fall below the lower threshold. Let's scroll down to the timecode input. Timecode is useful to synchronize lighting shows to audio. In this case, the Lampy accepts MIDI timecode. So no matter what your timecode input device is, it needs to be connected to the Lampy via MIDI. As soon as the Lampy receives timecode, it will show the incoming timecode here. Last but not least is the MIDI input. You can enable the MIDI input by just flipping the switch. Any MIDI input will be shown in the box, and you may select the MIDI channel from the drop-down on the right. Last up in the show settings are the output settings. The output settings are used to define the ArtNet and SAC protocols, which are very popular network protocols to send lighting control data via network. Please note that this function is only available if you have a Lampy dongle attached to the console or you're running a 2-universe console. To enable either ArtNet or SACN, they both can also be enabled at the same time, just flick the switches. To set the ArtNet or SACN universe or SACN priority, simply double-click, right-click or long-click in one of these text fields and enter the desired universe number in the keypad dialog. You can also choose to disable the ArtNet or SACN output for a certain universe. Thank you very much for watching this tutorial, and I hope to see you again soon.